Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
Yes, today we are talking about building your team, either as employees, independent contractors, under the table, however that is.
Whatever you do, you do.
That's not on us.
Yes, this is a hard one for a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners because most likely you've just started to realize that you can't do everything on your own. And you may have, like me, the mentality of if you want something done right, you do it yourself. You finally get around to delegating, you finally get around to hiring somebody, and then they suck and you have twice as much work. This is what we want to avoid. So that's what we're talking about today, how to avoid this. Well, this is what I'm talking about today. We don't want to have this situation. It's been an issue for a lot of my clients, for myself in the past, of finding the right team that can really support you and understand your vision and help you get to the next level without you having to be a crazy micromanager, psycho boss. Insert me.
I want to make it clear that they don't always suck. Sometimes you suck because you haven't done your due diligence and trained them appropriately and had the expectations
100%
in order. So
but it's your perception though, because if that's
Absolutely.
where you are, if it's your fault and you didn't train them properly, then you're going to have the perception that they suck even when they don't.
Yeah.
And so we want to avoid that whole situation.
Yeah. And when you hire somebody, it takes more effort in the beginning. You have to train them, you have to support them, you have to guide them, even with a great laid out plan. But let's get into like some of the basics of when you're ready to hire and or for the first time and or in addition.
Yes. So for me, when I'm thinking about the key things that I want from my hiring process. So first thing, you've got to make sure you fully, completely, totally define what position you're filling. So hiring somebody is just like the catch-all with no plan and no idea of what they're really doing. It's leading you down a road of failure, because if you don't clearly define your expectations, how are they supposed to live up to them? And if you don't clearly define the role and what's required of it, then you can't really get mad when none of those things happen. And so as the hiring person, whether that's HR or you specifically, it's important that you really clearly set out what you're looking for so that you don't set yourself up for failure from the get-go. And that goes, and when you're thinking about what you want in your employer, your contractor, that's how you're writing your ads, because you're looking for a specific type of person. And you have to even make it clear if you're putting out ads for employees, make it clear what you're looking for. Otherwise, again, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, the terms for that would be roles, responsibilities, and then also job description. And here's the thing. Some of you might be hiring employees. Some of you might be hiring a VA for the first time. One thing that can help you is not just like you can go to ChatGPT and look at if you have a specific role that you need to hire for, you're looking for a manager for the underwater weaving basket thing. I don't even know what
underwater basket weaving. It's rubbing off on her.
Because that's Amanda's favorite job, business. And they need to have X amount of qualifications and attributes. So ChatGPT can pull that up. If you're hiring like a VA, if it's your first time, or an assistant, one of the best places to start is keep a log of tasks. So a calendar of the things that, and you can even data dump it. Like what would you want them to handle? And just make a list. And then for a couple of weeks, like kind of pull things over as the week goes on. It doesn't mean that you give everything to them. That's after you hire them. We'll talk about that later. But this helps give you like a baseline of kind of the roles and responsibility, the tasks that you'll give to them. And that way you can have a really clear conversation, because you want to hire people with them understanding what they're supposed to be doing and vice versa. I work with a lot of a lot of employers and managers, and it just lacks like clear roles, responsibilities. Nobody knows what they're doing. So what happens is that things aren't getting done in the way that the owner, the manager, the leader wants, or they're being too creative, la la la. It's just, it is not a healthy situation for anybody. The boss gets frustrated, the person who was hired gets frustrated. Yeah, they don't know which way is up. Like there's lots of different things.
And that's also going to increase your turnover rate. If there's, even if you think the communication is clear, if they haven't been properly trained, if they don't know what their roles and responsibilities are, they're going to, no matter how many pizza parties you throw in the break room, they're still going to feel unfulfilled, and you're going to lead to a higher turnover rate because they're not getting what they want out of the job. And obviously you're not getting what you want from them. So really it trickles down into more than just is task A and task B getting complete. It really trickles down to a lot of different things. And, for me, sometimes you reach out, you have interviews with a half a dozen people, and you've narrowed it down to just one or two. And I used to have a really bit hard time, and I would just like hire both of them and just see which one worked out and then like fire the other one. It's not a very good tactic. I don't recommend it. It's a lot of paperwork. So, however, what I've learned from that failure, if you listen to one of our previous podcasts, Failure, My Friend, is that if it comes down to two very similar people who have similar credentials, they have similar, I feel like they might have the same personality type or behavioral style, and I feel like they would fit the role. Do they have more values that align with my business, or are they not aligning? So I can always teach a skill, like maybe if they don't know Excel, but I can't teach business ethics. Or I don't want to. So, I suppose I could teach it. There are classes on that. Go to school for that. So you can go to school for business ethics, but I don't want to teach that. So I can much easier teach an easy skill, like, well, Excel's not easy, but it's easier than teaching business ethics. It's easier than teaching a core value that the person might have. So if you're on the fence about somebody, just as a side note, I would say go with somebody who has more of an aligned value with your company than with a specific skill set if it's not as important. Like obviously if it's a pivotal skill set that's needed for that role, like you need them to have an MBA or something, that's different. But if it's something small, like they don't know how to do a Canva template, like you can teach that.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up. And what I will say is, yes, I love that. You can always teach a skill set, but you can't teach an attitude. And actually you can teach ethics, but they don't live the ethics. Correct. So there's a huge difference. Like people can learn about stuff all the time, all day, every day. They can learn about growth and positive mindset. They can learn about business ethics. They can learn about being honest. That doesn't make them that way. So, yeah. And so a couple of tools, just because we love practical tools when you are hiring, is that you can take a SWOT analysis. So you can look at their strengths, their weaknesses, what they believe are opportunities and threats. I love a good SWOT analysis. You can also look at their behavioral style, like depending on the role in the DISC assessment, a certain behavioral style is going to work better than others. You don't want someone who's completely introverted and very process oriented, greeting all of your guests who are coming in because they might not necessarily have the energy and the bubbliness that you need, or have somebody who can't pay attention to details and is completely always distracted, taking care of your books. Like at the end of the day, behavioral style does make a difference. It doesn't mean that they're not the right fit for your company, but maybe not the right fit for that position. And another thing too is like bring in your team. Like I actually do secondary and third interviews for a lot of my clients. I used to do it for you. Yeah. And I love that. And it's just to kind of give an outside perspective of that individual. So those are some practical tools that you can use when you are actually in the process. So let's talk about after.
Well, and I want to talk one more thing that's very important in hiring people is start the hiring process before you need it, because you don't want to be in this like, oh my gosh, I am in an emergency situation. Anybody will do. Don't do that. I've done that. Don't do that. Learn from my mistakes. Start the hiring process way before you think you actually need that position, because it's going to take some time and you want to ease into it and find the right person, not the right now person.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually one other thing too, that I forgot to mention is figuring out, and that's a question that I typically always ask in my interview with my clients, like interviewing their potential employees, is what's their learning style? Because it really helps, and how they deal with conflict. So those are a couple of great questions, but I do love that.
Yeah.
Hire before, and that is important, not the right now person. Okay, so let's say that you have found the right person. Now what? So here's where a lot of people kind of go astray. So they might have hired the right person. They might have found a person who could grow with the company. But then they just kind of are thrown into it and said, okay, bye.
Sink or swim.
Yeah. So one of the tools that I help with my clients is develop a 30, 60, 90, and then a 6-month and a 1-year plan. And that just kind of helps break down, depending on what they are, or maybe task oriented. We'll get to VAs in a second, but this would be more like employee, but even a VA that you foresee for a long time, and VA is virtual assistant, but having the check-in points on those particular time points is really important, and knowing what goals and like what percentage they need to be at learning, or whatever that is. And especially the first 90 days, I think it's important to have a weekly check-in. And the first 30 days, I think it's twice a week. It's to set up the week and to recap the week, to like unpack it. And those are just some of the best traits.
And before any of my friends on here say, I don't have time for that. Because I had that, like, I don't have time to babysit my employees every single day. You don't have time not to, because they're the face of your company when you're not there, depending on the role. Obviously, it's different for every person you're hiring, but often they're representing your business in a big way, and you can't afford to ignore their development within your company, because again, turnover rates, their satisfaction, their client satisfaction, a lot of things will pivot around this. And if you truly cannot do it, then delegate it to somebody and train them in that position, because really it's you spend time in the beginning so you don't have to spend time later. You take the time in the beginning of their employment or contract services with you, so that you don't have all these little missteps that drive you insane down the road for the next 3 years. It really is. It's like setting up your systems for your business. You set up your systems so you don't have to do it later, so that it runs smoothly. And that's the same thing here. Take the time now, because you can't afford not to.
Yeah. What is that quote? Like temporary discomfort for long-term success, or something like that. And it's truth. And if you don't have it, I love the position that you took, that they're the face of your company, but also you can only grow so big as an independent person, or as a small, like as you grow, you need more help. You can only handle so much, regardless of how amazing your systems are and how productive you are. You need other people. So don't you want to have somebody who's going to help you, hopefully long term, but also on top of that, every time you lose somebody, it's actually losing you more money, because you've put all that time and effort into it. But also moving forward, then you have to hire somebody new and go through that process again. And so it's almost like you're restarting the wheel every single time, because you didn't want to put in the effort from the jump. That is bullshit, and you're actually biting yourself in the butt.
And that's on you.
Yeah.
Just like Taylor Swift says, it's you. You're the problem. It's you. And I know nobody wants to hear that. And well, my business is different. When it comes down to it, when you're looking at your team, you can only be as strong as,
the weakest
link. And that's on you, because you hired them, you trained them. That's everything. You didn't set them up with the right mentor system, whatever that looks like. So if you're having big problems in your hiring and the effectiveness of your team, you got to look inward first. I'm not saying it's always every single tiny little thing is your fault. But, when I was a television producer, it was always this long running joke of, whenever there's a problem on set, it's always the producer's fault. And whenever it goes well, it's always the team. So great shoot. Thanks to the cameraman, thanks to the actors, thanks to the editor, thanks to everybody else. If something goes wrong, it's always the producer's fault. And that's just a level of taking responsibility for your actions within the company and within your role as a leader, because it's not that it's your fault that somebody dropped something, but it's your fault if you chose somebody, who has sticks of butters for fingers to transplant the precious piece of glass. So it's your choice in a lot of things. So make sure you're looking inward before you just blame your team for being incompetent.
Yeah.
I say this with love because this was me.
Yeah, I would say, watch the fault kind of wording, just because it is about taking the responsibility. And if you didn't put in the training, if you didn't put in the efforts, then that's on you. I want to back it up a little bit, because I can remember when I was hiring employees for my security company, and I made it very clear, actually, even my coaching consulting companies as well. I made it very clear that, because they would work intimately with me. And so I made it very clear the type of boss that I was, because I wanted to make sure that they can handle who I was and how I navigated and my expectations on more of a personal yet still professional level. So I think that's important as well. Let's talk about VAs, because you really hit like a lot of the employee aspects. With a VA, I would suggest, you can start small, and I like to just give them tasks at a time. So a bucket of tasks, and then you can layer more tasks on, because a VA is slightly different, or assistant is slightly different, versus giving them everything all at once. And the reason why I've done this is because I've gotten burned a few times, that I understand that we work at a very different level, at a very different pace. We're able to get a lot of things done at one time. And not literally I'm typing with my toes and my fingers, and
It'd be so cool if we
that
could.
would be freaking amazing. Could you imagine? Anyway, coming back to reality, is that I will give them and layer it as they get good at that, or as I need. That doesn't mean I don't give them like some things in the moment, but I really try to layer it in. So for example, hiring somebody for TikTok, right? Even though they might be able to help me with 10 other things, because TikTok is a need, I'm gonna hyper focus in. It doesn't mean that I'm not interviewing and asking about the other aspects that I want in them, but that is a task. I'm gonna make sure that they're hitting the deliverables, making sure that they're taking the feedback and direction, etc., before I layer something else on. So just a tip that I think is important for VA hiring.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right. So after you hire the people, you have the 30, 60, 90, like in the year or whatnot. It is about that constant communication, that constant feedback. It's about nipping things in the bud. It's about redirection. It's about building trust and transparency. And I understand that certain roles hold certain things, right? Like you also, like in certain individuals are a bit more private than others, and that's fine. I'm not saying that, but like that honesty, that transparency, and that trust is super important with your employees. And if you are having weirdness around it, they're absolutely going to have weirdness happen around it. And I've seen this happen time and time and time and time again. Now, there is also that line of they're working for you, right? Versus they're your friends. And very few people have the ability in the scheme of things, like a small percentage, have the ability to kind of keep that separate. There are people who do. I've actually had a lot of people, but I practice this. So, but yeah, so those are a few other kind of pointers.
I want to say one more thing, and you probably saw me snicker when you said it. With regards to communication isn't just sending a text. So and what I mean by that is, if you're not getting response through a text, try something else. Have a face-to-face, have a phone call, have an email. Like, if you don't consider the person to be non-communicative just because one style of communication isn't working for them, maybe that's not their thing. I worked with a lot of clients too, but myself, where you've got a technology gap where they really literally didn't get the text. They don't even know what texts are really. And there's no shade on that. So people just don't like it, or they'll never answer your phone calls. This is me. I never answer a phone call because I'm always screening my phone calls because it's noisy at my house. So the best communication, if you need to get in contact with me right away, isn't phone calls, because I'll almost never call you unless we're having an appointment. So knowing how to communicate with your team isn't just, oh, I sent everybody a text, so why aren't they responding back to me? And I've had a lot of my newer clients who are new to the field of entrepreneurship getting really frustrated because so-and-so didn't go on to this I mean, I paid for this platform and everybody's supposed to go and say their stuff on the platform, but everybody's on a WhatsApp chat and no one's responding. Again, like communication is something you have to teach as well. So how do you want the team to communicate? All those things are important to really consider. And if you're not getting the communication that you want, pivot your communication style. I know that this day and age, nobody wants to get on the phone, but sometimes it saves so much time just to get on the phone with somebody and actually make a phone call. And that's my least favorite thing to do, but I will do it if it will save me time and communication.
Yeah, I think that pre-communication should be set up and also structured. So a lot of the monthly team meetings, or depending on how young your team is, but also the individual ones, but also, yeah, absolutely, with the communication, nipping things in the bud, I think is super duper important, because you never know, and you want to make sure, especially with new hires, that things are going in the right direction. The other thing that I'll add to building your team is having employee reviews. So and even if they're independent contractors, even if they're VAs, so we do it with our team, even though they're all independent contractors, we're going to do reviews, and minimal once a year. And there should be goals and markers and direction every time that you have those reviews for them to work towards. And you need to be following up and following through as the boss, or as the person paying those independent contractors or those employees. And this is where I see a lot of companies kind of go awry, is that, okay, they go through the motions, if they go through the motions of the employee review, and then there's no follow through or follow up. And so essentially you're not setting the best environment for the growth, not just of your employee, but of your business. If you're not doing that, then you are not setting up your business for the best growth that it can.
Very, very true. And I mean, there's a lot that I could cover on evaluations, but one of the things I want to point out before anybody gets all poo-poo on evaluations, it's not a bad thing. I know, if the boss is calling me in to get evaluated, something's wrong. I feel like every evaluation is an opportunity for us both to grow. And if you approach it from that standpoint, it's not this big, scary, oh no, I have a staff meeting. Oh no, I'm going to get an evaluation.
That blows my mind.
It blows my mind that people think that.
It blows my mind.
But I know a lot of people do. I have many clients who dread evaluations because they don't want to be seen as the bad guy. They don't want to have this. They don't want to point out the things that aren't working. And I know depending on your behavioral style, it's a bit confrontational, but it doesn't have to feel that way. It doesn't have to be, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. It can be a very productive way to grow your business and grow your relationship with that employer or contractor. And I'm a firm believer in them. I usually like to do them twice a year.
Insane. And but I do want to just check that employee reviews aren't to tell people what they're doing wrong. That you do that in the moment.
In the moment.
You do not wait until employee reviews. It's about okay, let's let's look at what happened last year. How do you feel it went? How do we feel it went? Where are there opportunities for growth? It blows my mind that you attract that, Amanda, because
it's not all of them, but it's.
No, I'm not saying that.
And we work on that. It's one of the first things we nip. Yeah.
You just said
I did.
You have, and I don't experience that. I'm not saying that I haven't in the past.
Well, I think it comes from a lot of the newer business owners who are just afraid to ruffle feathers or still want to be buddy boss. I think they have such good intentions of they want everything to be sunshine and rainbows. And this is not throwing shade at them for being happy, kind people, because most of them are very happy, kind people. And I'm not saying that I'm not a little bit, It's just, that's the overall. I mean, they don't want anybody to be mad at them for pointing out their flaws because they feel really.
Yeah, that's why it's in the expectations. That's why when you hire them, you say this, and this, and this is going to happen. We'll do employee reviews at 6 months and at 1 year at least. I think in the first year it needs to be twice. I agree with you, Amanda. Like I like that mid-year checkpoint, but minimal once a year after that first year, but it's part of the expectations. But I think that that's also where we slightly differ is that, there's just expectations. Like I know, and I've gotten this a lot in the way that I parent, in the way that I lead, and this and that. And I've been called but like, that is the way that it is. And like, there's no question. And so people do things differently when they work with me or around me than maybe somebody else, because that's like the expectation. Now, we're not going to have the discussion. Like, it's just part of what it is. Like, it's no big deal. If you make a big deal out of it, they're going to make a bigger deal out of it. Like at the end of the day, like it's just part of doing business.
It is.
Yeah.
It's part of building your team.
It is.
And being a leader.
Absolutely. We'll have to talk about leadership skills on another one because we're out of time.
Probably. Then some.
Yeah. I feel like most of our podcasts, we can go on and on and on, but there's a lot. Listen, don't be afraid. Building your team is a good thing. And you are going to kiss a lot of frogs before you find those princes. And there is a such thing as a reason, season, lifetime, right? And so sometimes that employee is for a reason, sometimes they're for a season. And then some of you might have lifetime employees, and that's okay. But the more that you can actually set up some of the fundamentals and the foundations pre, during hire, and after hire, it will really help you out.
Absolutely. If you have questions or you have more specific things you want to learn about team building, let us know. We would be happy to jump on a call or talking about it on another podcast.
Absolutely. Till next time.
Get after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.